Welcome back to Mean Streets, where each week we investigate the best, worst, and forgotten movies of film noir. I'm Luke Deckard.
And I'm Matthew Booth.
And we are your cinematic sleuths. Today's case is the 2007 episode of Smallville titled Noir, starring Tom Welling, written by Brian Peterson and Kelly Souders, and directed by Jeannot, Szwarc. The log line for this glorious episode is: Lana is shot at the Daily Planet by a mysterious gunman. Jimmy is knocked out while studying photographs of the scene and dreams about a 1940s version of Smallville. Now, for this particular episode, we brought in a couple of Smallville / Superman experts. We got Zach from Always Hold On to Smallville and Anthony from Digging for Kryptonite. Welcome, Zach and Anthony. Thank you for joining us for this Smallville episode.
Hello there. Thanks for having us on to talk about this episode.
It's like the only episode of Smallville I could swindle for the podcast.
It's in the title. It works.
Exactly. You know, it's black and white. It's called Noir. We'll have 3 people listen to this episode because they'll be like, what the hell?
What is the crossover of your audience on this? I wonder. We'll find out.
That will be, I am very interested to know what that is, because we've done some Batman episodes. We did the Cape Crusader and we did the Batman, and not the strongest. People like the more pure stuff. You know, they want that Walter White blue meth when it comes to their noir.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I can safely say I probably would never have revisited this episode if not for this invitation. So thank you.
High praise already.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, go on.
I think people can probably get the gist of what we're going to say about this episode just from these brief introductions.
You know, it's got a reputation. Noir has a reputation. Some have called it the worst episode of Smallville ever.
Oh, that's not fair. That's not. There are much worse episodes.
Yeah,
at least from where I'm sitting. Anthony, what do you think?
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
Noir is okay. I will say this, and I know we'll get into it more, but I think the biggest picture takeaway I had was it plays vastly better watching it in a vacuum than the way it did watching it as episode 20 of season 6, as I was originally watching it as it aired back in the day. So in that context, it's a particularly frustrating episode. Watching it now completely on its own, it's fine.
Yeah. It should have been episode 13, 14, just somewhere in the middle, just somewhere forgettable, somewhere around Christmas time or something like that.
Well, I'll say this. I think Smallville, I think a lot of shows that ran back in the day, shows were 22 episodes, give or take, they suffered from this. Smallville specifically, though, I mean, look, I do a podcast on Smallville. I study Smallville, so I've seen the patterns, right? And for some reason, in the last 3 episodes or so leading up to the finale, they do these really silly one-off strange wastes of episodes. And then unfortunately, a lot of them involve our friend Henry James Olsen here. It's like, why are we... we should be driving towards a season finale of all the plots converging and all these things. And why are we doing this little side quest of an episode? Very strange choice, creatively, in my opinion.
Yeah, I always felt the same. It's a bold move, Cotton. You know, this is you're leading up to that finale, and this is what you're going to waste time on. Because I think, I think season 2 is kind of a high point of having, I think 3 episodes in a row that sort of lead into the finale, or maybe it's just 2 and then the premiere. But that's a block of 3 that work really well, and you kind of can feel where seasons are a bit stronger, where they're not wasting time. Your last 3 need to be big stuff. They need to be tight, and they need to be driving you somewhere. And I don't know. I would love to sit down with the showrunners of this season and say, why this episode at this point, but also just why this episode, which we might have an answer, but
let me ask a question to the 3 of you, because you 3 are going to be far more knowledgeable about Smallville than me. So did they need to make this episode at all? Could this have been left out of this season's run and nobody would have noticed? Because that's the feeling I got. Because it seemed to me that 90% of this was just so that Jimmy could remember a clue.
Yeah. I feel like obviously television has changed a lot and we're much shorter seasons and highly serialized. And I see this conversation a lot on social media about, I guess, people looking back at older shows like this and comments about quote unquote filler episodes. And the thing is, I think generally there's a good argument to be made for a quote unquote filler episode, because even if it's not really moving the overall plot of the season forward, it could still be an opportunity for character growth or examination or just a fun one-off, something like that. Like, it can still be worthwhile. It could still sort of count in some way. I feel like with this, maybe if they had nailed the noir aspect of it better, that fun quotient would be higher and we'd view it more favorably. Absent that, it really just feels like it doesn't accomplish anything, unfortunately. At least that's my view of it in rewatching it.
Yeah. I feel like if they had made it a more intrinsic part of Jimmy's character, because it's here in this one episode, and then never again does he mention his love of old time movies ever.
Yes, that's a problem. I think I didn't really even think about that. I know it came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
But they don't ever even bother to reference back to it ever. Maybe when he's being a secret agent and one of those other terrible late season Henry James
That's full Bond. That's full Bond. They don't even with that.
Yeah, I could really do without the hey sweetie. I'm like, I get it. You're Humphrey Bogart. It's obviously, I mean, Aaron Ashmore has said this is his favorite episode, right? I get it. If I were him and I were on this show, yeah, because this is the only one. Of course, he had to be in some dream world to be the protagonist, right? But he gets to, romance women and shoot guns and be in cool costumes. And like, so from an actor standpoint, and get to do something different than he usually does on the show. So I understand why he'd be his favorite. But outside of that, I can see that he's having a good time. But are we having a good time? That's the question.
And is everyone else having a good time in the show? I'm not so sure. I think there's a little bit of a divide there. I feel like the ladies really leaned into it more effectively, maybe. I don't know.
Glover as well, John Glover.
Yep, that guy, no matter what, that
his amazing haircut.
Always gonna sell it. Yeah,
his mustache. He is, and I'll just say now, he is the shining gem of this episode. John Glover. He's the one who understood the assignment and got an A+.
He always is. You could say that for any episode of Smallville. Honestly,
I agree. So I guess we'll go behind the camera and chat a little bit about the people who made this episode and how this thing sort of came about. So it was directed by Jeannot Szwarc, who he's no stranger to Smallville. He directed a number of episodes, including Perry, which I quite like the episode Perry. I think that's a pretty fun classic episode. Bride. I'm sure that is some of your favorites.
I love Bride.
Actually, no, that one's, the Doomsday storyline. We won't go into that, but
that's where it should have stopped.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the high point.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was good. So in terms of I gotta admit, in terms of the directing and the visuals of this, I think he did a pretty good job capturing noir of the classic era. My only complaint might be too many swipes and iris fades. They don't happen that often in.
Yes.
That's more like cartoons, not really in classic film noir. Do you see it as often as like every time they went to a commercial, it was whoop. It's like, all right.
They're leaning into the gimmick too much. I see your point. Like, oh, they did this once or twice in the 40s. Let's do it for every scene, the wipes and all that sort of thing. Jeannot Szwarc, though, film director, right? He did Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve, Supergirl the movie, Santa Claus the movie. Like he was in with the Salkinds back in the day, who produced the Christopher Reeve Superman series of films. So he's bringing some of that, cinema energy to it, right?
Yeah, I knew him from Jaws 2. He did the sequel to Jaws.
That's right,
of course.
Which is a fun movie. It's obviously not a patch on its predecessor, but as far as any sequel of Jaws can go, it's pretty serviceable. It's not bad. But
it's probably the second best shark movie ever made, probably. Right after Jaws.
After Jaws. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, and of course they should have left it there. And
That's right.
he has just passed away. Yeah, he has.
Oh, I did not know that. Oh, R.I.P. No, I did know that. Oh, sad.
Yeah, mid January. He just passed away.
Mid-January,
so.
yeah.
There we go. No, but I mean, he had a strong voice in Smallville. He did a lot of good episodes, a lot of memorable episodes, and I think where this one lets itself down is definitely not on its visuals or its style. I think it's more on the writing and on some of the acting. This episode was written by Brian Peterson and Kelly Souders, and this is season 6, so they've not taken over as showrunners yet. That's what season 8 onwards where they do it. So they've been with Smallville since what, the beginning? Were they on season 1? They're definitely on season 2 onwards.
I know season 2. I don't recall them doing anything in season 1, but I remember them showing up in season 2, and they're one of these writing teams that Smallville is prone to do. You have Alan Miles, you have et cetera, et cetera. But they're a strong writing team. They have a lot of great episodes, and they have a lot of not great episodes, and that's just when you have, when you're there for what, 9 out of the 10 seasons, and there's 218 episodes. You can't win them all.
No.
So we're not going to hold it against them.
No. I mean, some of their gems, I've highlighted a few. I'm not gonna lie, I really like the Skinwalker episode. Maybe that's a hot take. It's a bit cheesy, but I sort of liked it. But whatever. But Phoenix, Reckoning, Savior, that's a favorite of yours, Zach, I think, and as is Homecoming, another favorite of yours.
200th episode, also directed by Jeannot Szwarc, by the way.
Yes.
So
they're really good. I think not sporadically, but they are good at times writing incredible Smallville Superman, young Superman episodes, and then they do this. But they also don't just do this. They go into showrun, and there's a part of me that feels like they were better as a writing team than they were as a show running team. But I don't know if anyone else feels that way. That's my hot take on them.
I think Zach might fight you on that because you know how much.
I know he loves season 9.
That's the irony. I know Luke and I connected later on in the podcast, right? So I'm like, hey, come on, what do you think about Smallville? He said, well, I don't like any of these later seasons. I'm like, well, our timing was off there.
It's not that strong. It's not. I don't hate the later seasons, but it's for me. They become very uneven once season 8 onwards. It's very uneven for me.
Hey, Luke, we learned recently that Tom Welling, not a fan of the red, blue blur or the blur or the black trench coat or any of that stuff. So you might have a kindred spirit in the star of the show.
He's like, I hate everything Superman.
Should we talk about the glasses now? We want to talk about the glasses now?
We might as well talk about the glasses. In the dream, for those who haven't, I mean, I'm going to assume anyone listening to this has not watched Smallville unless they have come from Anthony and Zach, from your crowd. But yeah, Jimmy gets knocked unconscious, wakes up in Noir land, and there's this hustling, bustling Daily Planet, and Clark comes in, and waboom, he looks like classic Superman, classic Clark Kent. He's wearing glasses. He's patting down Allison Mack's chest with a napkin, very awkwardly. And he's wearing the glasses. What do we think?
One scene, that's all you get from him. But it was great while it lasted. It was great. Well, he looked fantastic. I loved it. To be honest, like I said, I would not have rewatched this episode if not for this. So I watched it when it first aired, and then I watched it again when I went through the season 6 DVDs when they came out. So, I mean, it's been 15 plus years since I've looked at this episode. Mm-hmm. I probably forgot most of it, including that. So that was a pleasant surprise going back and seeing that scene. It was great while it lasted.
Yeah, and I thought it looked good as well. I mean, like I say, I'm not a particularly a sort of expert on this series by any means, but I know enough about Superman to know that that's what Clark Kent looks like. You know what I mean? And I thought he did a pretty good Christopher Reeve impression as well, to be quite honest.
100%. See, that's the sad thing. He very, very rarely does this. Right at the very end of the show, it's like, look, man, you gotta become Superman and Clark Kent here. Then they make him wear the glasses for more than one scene. He wears a trench coat. He does, I just had a milkshake. I need to use the bathroom. Like, he's so good at that, right? Because Tom Welling, he's got a good gear for comedy, right? In the right context. and he just didn't want to do it ever and hated it. And I was on Talkville, the Ultimate Smallville Rewatch podcast hosted by Tom and Michael, and I asked Tom about the glasses thing because I'm like, if I gotta ask him sometime when I talk to him, and I'm glad I got this. And I asked him, hey, what's the deal with the glasses? Did they ever ask you to wear glasses? Did you not want to wear glasses? What's with glasses? And then he mentions he tells an anecdote about a story for an episode in season 7, which is a year after this, and it's like an alternate fabricated world, and he has to go undercover as a reporter, and they give him some glasses, right? And he wears them for one scene, like literally, and not even a scene, like a shot. It's like less than a minute. But he's like, yeah, so I was wearing these glasses, and then I pushed them up with my middle finger, and that was intentional. I was like, well, that tells me all I need to know. Thank you. I always suspected he hated the glasses. I don't know why. It's interesting. Like, why that is, Matt. You said it yourself. Like, that's what Clark Kent looks like. He wears some glasses.
That's what Clark Kent looks like. Yeah.
Like, I don't know, but also Superman wears a costume. We can't have that either. So that's where we are, unfortunately. But for that one brief moment here in this episode as well, because that's the joke we have, Anthony. Like, you get one scene a season, maybe, if you're lucky, with Clark and some glasses. He does so well. So well. And why couldn't he have worn the glasses just this entire fantasy world? This version of this character could have done it. That would have made it more acceptable and more fun, instead of just nope, you had your one scene. I told you. That's how I feel watching that. But it was great while it lasted.
Yeah, because I think it's really good as a Clark Kent performance. He looks the part, he acts the part, and it's the minute it's gone, the minute it's over, and the rest of it's happening. I'm thinking, can't we have Clark Kent back? Because I was quite enjoying that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that raises a huge problem with the episode, and that is, why do we have two versions of Clark Kent in this? Why does he need to have a double life? Why does he need to be a reporter, a bumbling reporter for 30 seconds, and then maybe a gangster, and then a cop? Well, I guess he's 3 different people. So it's like, why do we need any of these people? Because he's kind of superfluous to the entire episode.
Yeah, I was just going to say, he's hardly in it, is he?
It's disappointing.
Yeah, not a ton of screen time. I assume as we're barreling towards the finale, maybe this was to build in a little bit of breathing room for him before the heavier final episodes. But yeah, not a ton to do. Yeah, story-wise, why there I mean, I guess the idea is that subconsciously, right, Jimmy recognizes there's something up with Clark, and so it manifests in this double, triple identity in the dream that he's having. But otherwise, I don't know how necessary it is, other than perhaps Tom Welling being like, you get one scene with the glasses, so figure out a way for me to not need them in the other scenes.
Wear them.
You get why they did it, right? Because they want to lean into that time period. And there's even stock footage for an establishing shot of the Daily Planet from Adventures of Superman with George Reeves. Yeah. So they're really leaning into that. And you know what George Reeves did? All the time he wore some glasses. So it's just, I don't understand.
He wore cool, round tortoise shell glasses. Come on, Tom.
And a pinky ring.
And a pinky
George
ring.
Says pinky ring. See that in all
Mother
the
effer wore a
episodes,
pinky ring. They'll know I'm not Superman because I wear a pinky ring. They'll never tell. But there was a version of this episode where Tom Welling was not going to be in it at all. And this was fascinating to learn recently, that the original concept for Noir was to be a musical episode, which was all the rave at that time. And I hated it. And this is the one time, mostly, I don't hate them all, but mostly, but this is the one time I'm like, you know what, Tom, I'm glad you threw some weight around, because what do we think of a Smallville musical?
Well, I would have hated it. I mean, it would have made this even worse for me, if it was all singing as well.
Might have been more iconic, though.
Might have been, but I'm not a huge fan of musicals, generally. So I wouldn't have really bought into a musical episode of Smallville set in a film noir dream world. I think I'd taken something that I shouldn't have done.
Zach?
It would have been more memorable, I guess. So there's that, but it's obviously like, oh, Buffy did that. I guess we should do that. Like that's basically what that's what I would have taken from it. Like in Smallville, I have a tally board on my podcast, like movie plot as an episode, right? And a lot of times when they run, again, they're churning out 22 episodes a season for 10 years. They got to get some inspiration somewhere. They're going to run out. So they look around and they say, what's hot right now? Fast and the Furious, Saw, The Matrix, let's do all that, right? I get it. So they're like, oh, let's do a musical episode. They're late in the 6th season, right? They're like, that's the time for it, right? It would have been really interesting to see these people sing. I mean, Erica Durant's actually sang her song.
She did well.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. It would have been an interesting. It's already a weird, interesting oddity. I mean, maybe less. It's already weird oddity. It would have been more interesting with the musical part, just because it's something you never see these actors do. And sure, in 218 episodes, if you're going to throw one musical one in there, fine. I wouldn't have bothered me any more than it already bothers me this episode, right?
Fair enough.
I agree. I think, yes, it definitely would have been more memorable as opposed to what we have now, where, in my view, at least, it's a pretty forgettable kind of throwaway episode. So for better or worse, I think it would have stood out. I mean, looking back at other musical episodes of the day, I mean, I am a huge fan of the Buffy musical episode and the Scrubs musical episode,
Yes,
but
I like
it's
that.
like when everyone is game, it can work. If they're not, and obviously you had the star of the show, and it was so fascinating watching him tell that story on Talkville, because you get a sense of how other similar conversations probably went of like, oh, hey, can you wear the glasses for the whole episode? No, like I'm just not going to show up. Like, it was amazing to hear him talk about it. I mean, the other thing too is, I mean, I don't know if Tom Welling can sing at all. I suspect not, either he can or he just doesn't want to. I don't know. We know Rosenbaum is musically inclined. He's got his band and whatnot, but at the same time, do you want to see Lex Luthor singing? Like, I don't
No.
know. I feel like that breaks something in a way that it doesn't break an episode of Buffy or Scrubs or something like that. So I don't know. There's a part of me that's like, yeah, man, it would have been weird. Like, I kind of want to see what that would have been. But at the same time, I think that would have been a bridge too far for this show.
Yeah, and is film noir the right vehicle for a musical?
Yeah, that's that's about a decade later, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In its heyday, anyway, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I think.
Yeah.
Given all the things we say about noir on a regular basis, Luke, about it's darkness and it's feeding into the sort of chaos of the world and all that business and destiny and fate and all that.
Disillusionment of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Musical.
Let's
seems
sing a
bit,
song.
But yeah, it seems a bit sort of like out of place to have a world of gangsters, private eyes, and corrupt businessmen suddenly breaking into Busby Berkeley.
I mean, as it happens in this episode, they are watching The Big Sleep at the very beginning, a film I really like, but there's one scene I do not like. And that
we agree on this.
Is there's a moment where Lauren Bacall is just randomly singing a song in a club, and it has nothing to do with anything.
And she's singing it badly.
And she's singing it badly. And I hate it. Now, ironically, Erica Durance is basically doing the same thing, but I really like it here. I don't know why, but she is stunning and she can sing well. And there's something about the way that scene is shot, where Jimmy and Clark are at the bar. They're watching her come down. I think it's because it's spliced in between. That's probably the best scene in the whole episode, actually, because it's spliced between these guys learning from bartender Lionel a little bit about Lex, and you see in that moment where, like, Clark tells Jimmy, get in line. If you're after her, get in line. There's all these little things that are happening between all these cuts that I'm like, this is a really charming moment of the episode. And why couldn't the whole episode have been as slick and as sexy as that? Because I think afterwards it just sort of falls apart. But I don't know. What's your take on that particular scene? Because I love that scene. I thought it was fantastic.
I think it's the most noir scene in it for me. Because the rest of it is all a bit sort of cliched, in many ways, it appears to me, and that it's, it is sort of guns and fedoras and trench coats, but that scene in the bar, and she is a lounge singer. I mean, she is. I find it more acceptable that she is singing than I do Lauren Bacall singing in a private room in a casino, for example. Which doesn't seem to make any sense to me. But the whole look, design, sound, and atmosphere of that scene screams Noir to me, and it screams Noir done properly and quite well. Whereas the rest of it all seems a bit like kids in dress up.
I think that's fair. I think you look at a lot of the rest of that whole sequence that makes up the main chunk of the episode, and you get a lot of the trappings of Noir, but in more of a superficial sense, like the swipes and all that. And it gets you part of the way there, but I don't think it really gets you all the way there. But a scene like the one that we're talking about, I think that's where we're kind of going beyond the superficial and we're really getting more at the heart of it.
I agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah. Because you're right. It's just when Lex gets shot, it's just, there are trappings. That's the very word. They're just there, but they're not actually doing anything. They're not contributing anything. It's just that's what this sort of film should look like, and so that's what they give you. And it's quite a different feel. A lot of rain. But it's quite a different feel in the bar. Then it looks as if they're sort of trying, and they're trying to do something that matters almost. Whereas the rest of it just seems a bit flat to me.
I feel like everyone was in their element in that scene. I mean, we haven't mentioned John Glover yet, but the way he is just so suave in that role of bartender stroke kind of usurped gangster, and the way he's kind of spitting information out to Jimmy about Lex and follow Lex, and this is what he's going to do. And there's a lot of intrigue happening, and the way Lex is just sort of over there leaning and casually watching Lois as she's singing and looking incredible, and Clark looking, he's so cool and stoic in that moment. It's like again, like he was totally cool as like bumbly Clark Kent, but then also this version is also cool, and I'm like, can we just have one or the other? Could he have just been the cop from the beginning? Or like, because like, is he meant to be a heavy in this scene? I'm a little bit confused by it. Because Lex says a comment to Lionel about like him hiring like some new muscler, and I'm like, is he referring to Clark? Is Clark meant to be? And he's like, no, I don't have anything on Kent yet. And I'm like, what? What's the relationship?
See, any kind of plot holes like that, I just said, oh, it's a dream.
It's a dream.
Fine. I'm not going to worry about it.
Sure. I can let that slide.
But they wanted to do, I guess the reason why Clark was a reporter is they wanted to have him like be around the Daily Planet environment. Well, the wear glasses, right? But they have him around the Daily Planet environment, so even at like the end, it's all kind of like, because we have X amount of sets, and that's why they redressed the Talon for this nightclub, which actually for one of the best redresses of the Talon is for this nightclub, because it's in black and white, so it's less recognizable. And the way they the coffee bar is now a bar, and so it all works very well. The staircase, I think the redressing that works very well. But they didn't need to see everybody, I guess. Like in this, as much as we said that we don't see Tom Welling very much, we could have seen him even less. I mean, this should be a Jimmy focused fantasy, right? And it's so interesting because like, you're kind of splitting you have your lead of the show, which is Clark and Tom Welling, and then you have your lead of this, fantasy world, which is Aaron Ashmore and Jimmy, and they're kind of competing. Because it's also interesting the structure of this, right? Most other episodes that would do something like this, like you would cut back and forth between the real world and like the dream world, right? Like, oh, we got to wake him up, and then you cut and it'd be like Lexmas, for example, and one of the most famous small episodes, which General Szwarc might have directed as well. I don't know, but we know this is not real, so there's no point to just try to quote unquote maintain the fantasy, right? So maybe if you cut back and forth between like real Smallville and Noir Smallville, you could have balanced this out a little more, and that way. And then you wouldn't feel the need to kind of keep injecting Clark all over the place in this fantasy world. So I don't know. And speaking of structure, it's so strange because it's like there's a whole like act plus after this is resolved, So right?
Yes. It is oddly bookend by reality, and I mean, there's right before Jimmy gets knocked out. I mean, Clark is meant to be on a mission to go find who shot Lana. That's a perfect subplot for your Clark storyline. Zoom in here, zoom in there, whatever. Going to the because they meant to be to the opera. Go to the opera. Something, it's easy. There you go. But nope.
And then you could have just had Clark in that one little scene with, oh, sorry, G shocks Willikers, and then that's it. And they don't need him anymore.
Yeah, which would have been a nice sort of Easter egg, wouldn't it? A sort of Christopher Reeve Easter egg. It would have been a nice switch to have Clark appear, do a bit of a goofy Clark Kent moment. But as far as the Noir story is concerned, that seemed dumb. That would have worked better, I think. Because, like you, Luke, I'm not really sure what he's supposed to be doing. Who he seems to change who he is. I mean, I'm not even sure if they're meant to be three different people or the same man. I mean, it's just it's just bonkers. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah,
it's a dream.
The whole backstory.
Well, it's a dream. Yeah.
With Clark, I mean, it is flimsy. It's like the idea that he's a cop who's sent undercover as a reporter at a newspaper because Lex owns it. So it's like, that's why he's there. I mean, I think it's pretty flimsy, but the fix that we're suggesting as far as cutting back and forth and not just staying in that fantasy world, I think that does solve another issue, because in this dream world, it's like we're not only seeing what Jimmy sees. There are moments where like between Lana and Clark, and they're like, he's not there. Like, he couldn't know about that. But again, we chalk up a lot to, well, he's just dreaming. So even if he's not there, but I think if he had done what we're suggesting, then you can really just zero in on like what Jimmy is seeing through his POV in this dream world. And I think that might have made it a little tighter.
Mean Streets will return right after this. Who doesn't love a good boxing movie? Well, Steve Hunt presents the Boxing Movie Podcast. On each episode, Steve and his guests discuss a movie that has boxing as a theme. Do not be put off if you're not a fan of boxing, though. Of course, he covers the likes of Rocky and the sequels, but the depth of boxing-themed movies across cinema history is much greater than you might imagine. Boxing Movie Podcast has covered the early works of Hitchcock, explored the world of blaxploitation cinema and the golden age of film noir, with episodes covering The Setup, Champion, and Stanley Kubrick's Killer's Kiss. You might not have previously considered yourself a boxing movie fan, but after listening to a few episodes of the Boxing Movie Podcast, you may have to reconsider that view. Find the Boxing Movie Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Now, back to the show. I agree, because I mean, when I dream, it's from my point of view always.
Yeah, aren't you always in your own dreams?
Like that's a really good point. It's like, why are we seeing these scenes from other people's perspective? That actually makes zero sense. And actually, that reminds me. I don't know if you guys are watching Dexter. Do you watch Dexter or the new show Dexter Original Sin? I love the show Dexter, the original. I'm watching Original Sin, and there is a I'm gonna have to spoil it, so if you don't want something spoiled, just pause for skip like 10 seconds. But basically at the end of Dexter New Blood, he gets shot, and this Original Sin opens up with him being rushed to the hospital, and everything we're seeing is his life flashing before his eyes. His life, I should emphasize, flashing before his eyes. And there are a bunch of random flashbacks from his dad's perspective, from into his dad's life. So I'm like, wait a minute.
It's a framing device they didn't need. Interesting. Okay.
Exactly. And I kind of feel like maybe Smallville Noir is like doing something, but it's like, wait, this is a dream. You need to it needs to be focused with that, or it becomes a bit confusing.
Well, if they wanted to do, hey guys, I got an idea. Let's do something set in the 40s, right? They already have a template for this. Relic, a season 3 episode, they had set in the 60s. And there were different younger family member versions of the characters. You could have these actors play different characters in a different setting and be telling a story and that sort of thing, right? But I don't know, but going to that trick again might have been kind of lame. I don't know. It's all kind of lame though. That's where we keep circling around that problem. Yes. It's all kind of lame. We're trying to solve it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because it doesn't really, like going back to where we started, I guess. And Zach, you mentioned Lexmas, and that's a perfect counterpoint to this, because it's like structure aside, just focusing on the fantasy that Lex experiences, like it moves his character forward, because based on what he experiences in this world where he has Lana and he's repaired his friendship with Clark, and then everything falls apart, and then he wakes up and he realizes like money and power, like I want all of it. And it's like, okay, like now this is charting him on this course that he's going to be on. So it really means something, and it moves his character forward. Whereas here with Jimmy, it's just like, well, he happens to like these old movies and then he lives it out. It's just like, I think Lane is a good, I mean, I was really watching it and thinking about it. It's like, well, that's kind of what I kept coming back to.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's weird because anyone looking at this, they can see that I have this promo picture from Smallville season 6. And this was the weirdest set of promo pictures I think this show ever did, because
I don't know, man. I've seen some other crazy ones.
They've done some odd ones, but this one was particularly odd because, you know, they're all dressed all snazzy, but like they're from the 40s or from the 50s, and it gives this impression that like, oh, are they going to be working? Is everyone working at the Daily Planet in season 6? Is that what's happening? Is that what, you know? Because Clark's wearing his little suit and his little stinking, wonder why he has such a flashy watch, but that thing just sticks out. But it's like, you know, the old-timey desks and computers and typewriters and stuff, and you're like, okay, this is interesting, this is a cool like picture, but you know, is it referencing the Adventures of Superman? Are we trying to hark back to like that kind of vibe, like this is where cinematic Superman sort of comes from, and are we going to lean into that this season? No. That's
a great point, Luke, because obviously they shoot these promo images before the season even comes out, right? And as we mentioned, this is episode 20 of season 6.
Yeah.
So this is like 9 or 10 months after these promo shots have been shot. So maybe like, hey, maybe they're running out ideas like, you know what? You know, we had that 40s theme for no reason for the promo shots. Maybe we could do something with that. Right, because they got desk fans and
yes,
Lois and Chloe looking like pinup girls in some of these shots. And it's like, okay, like the vibe is intriguing, but it means nothing in the actual series up until this episode.
Yes. I can really buy into that, to be honest, because what struck me watching this episode was, why are we doing film noir? What's this got to do with anything, really? And it's interesting that you said earlier that, you know, Jimmy's love of old films hasn't really been touched on before. So if that comes out of the blue, then it's obviously a sort of an attempt to shoehorn everything in, isn't it? So maybe I can fully get on board with that idea that this was shot, and then they thought, why have we done this? You know, well, shit, we better make an episode that means it's relevant. You know? Stick them in the 40s, that'll work.
I think there's even, I think they try to hang a lampshade on it, as the terminology goes, because isn't Chloe even say, I didn't realize you were such a fan of this stuff? That's their, yes, we know we never mentioned it before, but here you are, fan. Yeah. And then I when I cover this on the podcast proper, always on the Smallville that I do, I think I made the same observation. Like, if you have a favorite movie and you're gonna sit down with a friend or a girlfriend, whoever, and show it to them, like, can you just like chill a little bit and not like say all the lines? Because Jimmy sits down, he's like saying all the lines that he's showing this movie to Chloe to. I'm like, dude, like that's, people don't like that. Like that's
why is he not doing it at home?
Because we only have so many sets, Matt. There's only so many sets.
Where was Chloe living at this time? Was Chloe living in the apartment at the Talon?
I believe Chloe and Lois might have been roommates at the Talon apartment that Lana used to live in at this point.
Right. Why did they not just do it there?
Yeah.
Because Lana had to get shot upstairs and the guy had to knock out Jim. It's all it's all contrivance. But yeah, the setup, I'm all for like a weird, like, there's some great Smallville does these gimmicky things. And I don't know, and these quote unquote filler episodes, as we said, that doesn't automatically mean they don't matter or they're not good or they're not entertaining, right? Yeah. There's another episode, Labyrinth, in this very season 6, which is an alternate kind of reality where Clark wakes up, and again, as I understand it, Buffy did this as well, an episode where Clark wakes up in a mental institution, and the entire series was a lie. Was a
fantastic episode.
Yeah, and it's a fantasy he's created in his head to deal with the trauma of his life, and that's interesting. Like, obviously, we know that's fake, but let's see where this goes. And then he explores. You see, he interacts with Lex and with his mom and with Lana, like. interesting things were done. And season 6 is one of the weaker seasons of the show, so I'm not going to say it was this great profound character change like Lex in season 5 with Lexmas, but that's interesting. And he comes out the other end and he's like, like he sees Lex and Lana in the real world after this fantasy, and he has a good scene with them, and good to see you on your feet, he says to Lex, because in this fantasy, like in the car accident from the pilot, they recontextualize it where like, yeah, I was trying to swerve to avoid you and I hit a tree and I lost my legs, and it's a very powerful scene, and Rosenbaum does a great job in that. So my point is, like, they know how to do this. So maybe they just kind of mail this one in, and 1 out of 22 you can mail in, I guess. But
you can. It's interesting though that Superman in general has a history of engaging with noir, which again, I'm sure like any of our regular listeners, like, why the fuck are we talking about a Smallville episode? Because it's in black and white, guys. Because it's in black and white. And Jimmy's a PI kind of, and they show the big sleep because WB, and they have the rights to do that. But but if you go back through like just Superman's history, I mean, you go all the way back to the Adventures of Superman. Anthony, you have a podcast. You dive into the George Reeves series, season 2, Semi-Private Eye. A Jimmy-centric episode takes on the mantle of a Private Eye when a Private Eye and Lois get abducted or kidnapped by some gangsters, and he's, he has the cops on the phone. He's like, "Hey, cops, someone's been kidnapped," and he's like, "I'll do it my way." And then he hangs up the phone, and he's like, "I'm gonna go save Lois." And what's the Garrity, Homer Garrity, or and it's like it's kind of the same thing as Smallville Noir, but done better and in less time, and makes more sense even in its schlocky silliness. I felt, but the point is it's sort of baked in. Even Lois and Clark did an episode of it that, as you're saying, Zach, it's like that. It's like the Relic episode where they are playing, when they flash back, they're playing, all the cast are playing different people, but it, film noir-esque and black and white and lounge singing stuff. And so it's there is a place and there is a way to utilize film noir within a Superman narrative, because a lot of people probably assume, you think noir in comics, you probably go to like Batman. You probably don't really think that Superman could fall into that. But I mean, the entire Adventures of Superman is a more or less a film noir series. It is a crime series.
Well, I would limit that to the first couple of seasons. And honestly, really the first season was much darker and more hard boiled. By the time you get to season 3 and the shift of color, and I say this because I'm making my way through them now, and they're very, very light and silly and kid friendly. But yeah, I mean, those black and white seasons, and especially that first one for sure. And Lois and Clark, like you said, did it. And even the Superboy TV series, they did an episode in season 3 or 4.
I didn't know that.
It's the thing. I binged them all, so it's really blurred all together here. But something with a ghost, and then you flash back and you have our characters playing, like different versions, and they're kind of in that mode. So yeah, there's definitely a tradition of this.
Yeah, it's a shame that Smallville didn't nail it, because of all the iterations of Superman that have been on the big screen or small screen, Smallville probably is lent to being able to utilize this genre the best, because Clark is essentially your average Joe with superpowers who is solving crimes. It's they said that they based a lot of this off of X-Files, and X-Files has a lot of noirish influence to it, with Mulder being sort of the outcast. He might be official FBI, but he's the outcast of the FBI, solving things and investigating things that no one cares about but actually have huge significance to humanity. And Clark is kind of always doing it on a weekly basis. He sort of could have fulfilled that loner role, who is never getting the girl, who is the Kents are always like about to lose the farm, so there's always money troubles, there's always things like that. So it had the stuff there all along, but the way that it was eventually utilized for this show was a stumble and a fail, I think.
Well, they end on like a good note, a proper note for a film noir, right? Where like Jimmy still gets arrested and like it all goes wrong for him. It's like,
Yes.
sorry, kid, there are no heroes in Metropolis, and it's like Chinatown ending, sort of, right? And it's like that's
Yes.
the kind of energy they're going from. Like that is appropriate. Now, totally unearned how you got there, complete contrivance, but like they got that point as far as like actually capturing the feel of something film noirish. They end the whole sequence on a strong note.
Yes, I agree.
The idea of the the innocent hero being screwed over by everybody is very noirish. Very noirish. And Lana is obviously meant to be the femme fatale in this, and she sort of does what femme fatales do, but it's all very sort of lightweight.
Very half-assed.
Yeah. Yeah, all right, half-assed.
Half-assed.
But yeah, so I agree about the ending. I think the ending is of the noir section is quite good, and going back to what we said about the bar scene, when it does it well, it actually lands quite well, and it does what I would want it to do. But it's just that the examples of that are too few and far between for it to work as a whole for me, but
yeah.
If anything, it's more frustrating because it shows that they could do it, and we wanted more of that. I want to see more of that real noir grittiness to it and that noir fatalism,
Yeah.
But I suppose when it's done well, when it's done well, it really works. When it isn't done well, it really fails.
Yeah. I'm genuinely surprised that as I was looking up information on this episode that I couldn't find any connections to either Lois and Clark or the George Reeves show. It's almost like when they did this, they literally just looked at this poster and thought, hey, this poster, put it in black and white and do an episode like that. Not aware of I don't know, that sort of history. But sorry,
they did take that stock footage from the Daily Planet side. That's the only
that's true
connective tissue. Yeah.
That's an afterthought though. Some editor, some intern was like, oh yeah. Yeah. We got that show from way back in the day. We could just slap that. Okay, done.
Yeah. I mean, that would have been a different, arguably more intriguing episode if this really were an ode to the George Reeves series and they, really just did an updated take on one of their stories.
Oh, that would have been so good.
I mean, like that would have been,
yeah, that would have been interesting.
At the time when I really hadn't watched Adventures of Superman, it probably would have been lost on me. But now it's like I would eat that up. But the other thing I was thinking is there a problem with the setup of this noir where we have this key pairing of Jimmy and Lana, and the chemistry is not there, right? Had it been Clark, who's been hired by Lana, or if it had been Chloe who enlisted Jimmy, I feel like this would have lined up more with what you would expect from this. I feel like there's a disconnect on this, no?
But isn't part of the fun of this to see characters interact in ways they never do, right? Because like I can't think of any other Lana and Jimmy scenes off the top of my head. Anthony, can you? True. I mean, I'm sure they talk once or twice, but
maybe.
No, that's true. And well, on that note, I mean, the fact that you get a Lex-Lois romantic pairing in this show exceedingly rare. Obviously, in the post-crisis comics and Lois and Clark, they play around with that. But here,
this is it.
They went in the Lex-Lana lane, but that was no pun intended. But so that was interesting to see. So I do agree with that aspect of it. But I still feel like something falls apart with the setup.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I there's that scene where where Lana is talking to Jimmy and she's like, I just need you, and she's doing her best kind of Kathleen Turner, Lauren Bacall, smoky voice. She's like, I just trust you and I just need your help. You're the only man I need. And like she's saying a lot of stuff, but she's not like giving anything over. Like the femme fatale, like she'll at least kiss the guy. You know what I mean? And she's not even and from Jimmy's perspective, I'm like, do you like her? Do you not like her? Do you fancy her? Do you not? Like,
we don't know. Yeah, that's a great point.
If you're going to put the characters in interesting new situations, like, Lex and Lois, perfect example. In the real world, those two aren't making out. So, but here in this dream world, they are. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. Where here it's like, okay, well, Lana her secret lover should not be Clark. It needs to be someone else. But it's not, and it's weird. That dynamic is weird because Chloe because the thing is, it's so frustrating actually. Because Jimmy's like, "Oh, hey, Chloe, let's watch this old film because your life is like a film noir." And then when he goes to Dream World, she's in it for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
She doesn't help him do anything.
I know this could actually be quite revealing into his true feelings.
right?
Psyche of Henry James Olsen. That's interesting. Like,
What is-
yeah,
what are
like
we
are
learning
you
about
secretly in
Henry
love with your
James?
girlfriend's friend? Like, it's messed up, man. Like that's not cool.
Like,
Let's explore that.
I could almost understand the fantasy if it's Lois, the cousin, who you probably are spending more time with than Lana, maybe. I don't know. But
That's
it's
the great
so
point,
weird.
because later on, especially in season 7, they pair up Lois and Jimmy a lot, because they're like they're the only characters at that point who don't know the secret, and they kind of like, oh, we're gonna figure stuff out. And sometimes I find that rather annoying, frankly. But there is something there, but there is nothing here between Jimmy and Lana. And we were kind of brushing on like performances and stuff off the top. Like, I think everybody did pretty well. I'm going to say this. I think Rosenbaum was maybe mailing this one in. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He did not. And Anna, even Welling too. Like, again, the scene with the glasses was great. I don't know. I guess he had moments. I don't know. Maybe I'll walk that back a little bit. He was okay. Again, I feel like the ladies lean into it the best. And Glover, he's in his own category always. And then I feel like Welling was okay. Certain scenes more so than others. And Rosenbaum, I don't know. We'll find out not too long from now when they talk about this. But I feel like he wasn't.
Tom, let me tell you what. I hated this episode. I was in a bad mood. I was sick. I just was like waiting for them to call cut. You know what would have been cool to see, Lex? This is an alternate. I can't believe they never, ever, ever, ever did this on the show. Put him in a wig. Have him. Let's see what he looks like differently. It's strange to see bald Lex Luthor. Not that people didn't. I mean, there's Yul Brynner. There's so many actors of that era that had bald heads, but it's so strange to just see like just Lex as himself hanging out in this bar. Everybody else has a kind of a look. Even Jimmy to a point, because Jimmy's wearing his bowling shirts and he's kind of childish, and this, at least he's a little more adult, a little more put together. Like everybody else looks different, but it's just Lex over there in a tux. I've seen Lex in a tux on this show. So to do so, I don't know why it didn't strike me till now, but like I can't believe all these alternate versions and realities and dreams, and we never see Lex with hair. Strange.
True.
Especially if they'd done like a proper Gene Hackman curly wig.
Lean into it.
That would have been great.
I do agree that the female leads are leaning into this the most and giving it more than everybody else. They seem to be much more invested in it than anybody else on the screen. Apart from Jimmy, apart from Aaron Ashmore, who, as you said earlier, as an actor, you're going to be really you're going to take this and run with it, aren't you? Mm-hmm. Especially if you're a bit player in the regular episodes. So he's obviously having a great time, but I think that the two, Lana and Lois, are doing what they're acting like people in the 40s noirs did. Lois is. There's a lot of Veronica Lake in this.
Oh yeah,
and sort of intentionally done. Like Luke said before, doing the best sort of Lauren Bacall husky voice impressions.
I'll say Chloe
and that pays off
as well too, like being that plucky like sidekick character. Right?
Yeah. So absolutely.
All of them, all three of the female leads, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, and that does pay off to a certain extent. I'm sort of grateful that they're there, because everyone else just seems to be bored rigid.
They just they nail the patter and the cadence of that dialogue. Like I think you buy into it a little bit more.
When Lois confronts Lex at the back of the club, or whatever, in the car park, I thought she was brilliant in that. I thought she was really good in that, and that reminded me of scenes from old noirs.
You mean Lana?
Doing the same thing.
Lana. You said Lois. You mean Lana, right?
Lana. Yeah. It reminds me of scenes from the 40s. Yeah. Films of the 40s that are doing the same plot development. So all of that is quite well done. It's just up against the rest of it and fighting against the rest of it.
There's also part of the things that they spent too much time trying to find film noir references. Like Lana's opening call where she's like, "I need to report a murder." Mine. That's Dead on Arrival.
That's DOA. Yeah.
You know, that's from a big film. We're showing The Big Sleep, where we're showing. There's lots of little nods and references to a lot of things. What's the little image that Jimmy keeps talking about all over the place? The guard. What's it called?
Gardenia,
right? That's from the Maltese Falcon. That's the so it's they're pulling all of these interesting things, but they're doing kind of half-assed stuff with them. It's like, maybe stop finding it's almost like a Marvel film where it's like, we got to have all the Easter eggs, or like a new Star Trek, all the Easter eggs, all the things, but like stupid storyline. It's like, no, have a good storyline with a couple of Easter eggs and it'll go a lot better.
Yep.
And there's always a danger with things like that, isn't there? That maybe this is just me, but if you put too many of those in, you run the risk of me thinking, God, I wish I was watching The Big Sleep instead.
Mm.
Yes. Which actually, Jimmy was while he was looking at the photos.
Yeah, or I wish I was watching DOA instead of this.
Stop reminding us of The Thing, because we're gonna realize we like that more than this.
Stop reminding me of things that are better than this.
Did anyone notice the case of the jumping gunshot wound?
Yes.
Oh no.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, this is I've not watched this episode many times. I've probably seen it maybe 4 or 5 times in the course of my life. This time I was watching, I was like, they show Lana, she's on the ground, she's lying on her left side, blood, gunshot wound. Next scene, she's on a stretcher. The paramedics are pressing down on her right side where there's a bunch of blood. And I was like, wait a minute. And I went back. I was like, oh no. Then the next scene, when Lionel is hovering over her, it's moved back to the left. And I'm like, that's, it's small, but it's one of those sort of, it's like, this kind of sets up the quality of the episode you're about to see. Like,
fair.
You know what I mean?
This isn't a goof per se, but you know what drove me nuts at the beginning when Lex shows up at the Daily Planet and Lionel is like, we're having her medevac to the specialist in Smallville. The specialist in Smallville, we spent the first half of this series helicoptering everybody to Metropolis because God forbid you get treated as, even though we spent a lot of time at the Smallville hospital, but still, it's like, if it were dying, you had to go to Metropolis. Now we're going to Smallville. What is this?
That is hilarious. Because the problem now, because it was the reverse, like you said, Anthony, from the early seasons, it was like, we have a Smallville hospital set. We got to bring in people from there and here and there. And now they spend so much time in Metropolis, but they have their Smallville hospital set. It's not until season 8 where they transition into a Metropolis General Hospital. There's, I think there's, what is it season, is it season 7? Anthony will know probably more than me, but like when Lex gets shot, Lionel's like, thank God we got him to Smallville in time.
Oh yeah.
It's so funny.
Absolutely crazy. Wait, and then I have one other, I guess, nitpick, but I think this is pretty central to the whole episode. I would have been more okay with this if at least Jimmy figured out something in his dream that no one else figured out, right? So he comes out of his dream and he realizes like, oh, the cigarette case, like it stands out to him. It's like, well, Lana doesn't smoke. What was that about? And he had all the photos and everything. But it's like, Lois
already has it.
Already clocked this from the jump. So it's just like, come on. I mean, we always want Lois to have something to do, but like, that's the other thing where, going back to this theme that we've had here about it, kind of just feeling like it didn't really matter. I feel like this is another instance of this. At least give this guy a win, something that nobody else figured out.
Yeah, I totally
I agree with it, because there is a sense of, well, what was the point?
Yep.
What
didn't matter.
Why have we done this? Didn't matter. There's been no sort of substance to it at all. It's just been a bit of a nod to film noir and a bit of a jaunt. And I agree, filler episodes can be fun, absolutely, but do it better than this. Make it count. If it's, because I would have preferred, I mean, like I say, not watching it as part of a continuous run of a series, but I would have preferred it just to be a standalone episode. There's nothing to do with any main plots that are going on through the series. It's a bit like when I felt a bit like I did when I watched the Cumberbatch Sherlock series, and the Abominable Bride came along, which was set in the Victorian period. And I thought, oh, this will be all right. This will just be an hour and a half of Victorian homes with these two actors. Great. And then it turns out he's it's
basically Smallville Noir. It's a dream.
It's a dream on a plane. What are you talking about?
Why do they feel the need to like have that framing device, right? I guess as audience members, they don't give us enough credit to be like, all right, it's a one-off. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, this is not part of the real series. This is just a Christmas special, as the Abominable Bride was, I think. And just have it as a standalone. And I got the same idea with it. I was thinking, well, is this meant to have explained some sort of plot point in an ongoing story? Because if it is, and if it were to explain it, all it is that Jimmy's remembered this cigarette case. But as you say, Lois has already got it. So
if you edit, not that I'm going to try, maybe I will one day, but if you just edit this episode and you take the Noir stuff out, you have Jimmy wake up, oh, hey, you know what? I took a picture of that and now it's not there. That's a clue. Like that's it. Yeah. You don't need any of this stuff. That's the real revelation to him. That he tagged a picture and it's missing now. And I got to say, I can never sing enough praise to John Glover. Like when him and his security guys show up at the apartment and they George, go ahead and take that. Like he's just so cool. He has this guy just taking Lois's laptop and like it's so cool. That's a great scene. So there's stuff to love in here, even though it's kind of a mess. And that's it's a nice microcosm of the show, really.
Yes. Well, I mean, back to John Glover. Like, I mean, he gives one of the best lines in the film. There's a scene after Jimmy has shot Lex, and he's at the bar and he's all disheveled, and Jimmy really looks at that's like another that's a really good film noir look that Jimmy has. The way his hair is disheveled, excuse me, the way his hair is messed up and stuff, like it's perfect. And the way the bartender's like, what dame did this to you? And then Glover gives this line. Because he's like us, it's not a dame, would it be? I guess that's what keeps us coming back for more. And it's the hammiest, cheesy line, but the way that Glover delivers it, I'm like, I buy it. And in the same way, when Jimmy's off on his little adventure, he calls Lana and he goes, "The boy wonder might have taken the bait." Stupid line. Stupid line. I am sold on this line because the way he delivered it. Like, it's like, yes, you need like that. He is the shining gem of this whole episode. Like every time there's a Lionel scene, I'm like, yes.
You know who's another great actress on the show that was not in this episode? They really could have done something with this. Annette O'Toole, not in the episode.
Yeah.
What a waste. She's one of the top actors of the whole series. And you have her under contract, and you just gave her the week off. Like this, she would have loved to do something like this at this point. She's leaving at the end of the season because she's bored with all the stuff that she hasn't been doing, and fair enough, right? But this would be something fun for her to do, and she would have ate this stuff up, I bet.
Yeah,
that is
definitely
true.
feels like a mistake.
Yeah, that's true. That as one of those sort of matriarchal, rich, powerful women that you get in Noir.
Yeah,
Like I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but Luke might be able to fill it in. Like that awful woman in The High Window.
Yeah. I can't remember her name yet, but because also she's
a
senator at this point, isn't she? So much you could have done with that.
So much you could have done with that.
Yeah, I know. The other thing I wonder, like we talked about earlier, how this was originally conceived of as a musical. I wonder how far along in the development process for this episode they went to Welling. Was it right from the jump and he was like, no, and then they had plenty of time to reconfigure? Or were they further along in conceiving of this as a musical? And then he said no, and they had to, I'm really giving them the benefit of the doubt. Like, I wonder if maybe there was a little bit of a pivot that they had to make and it ended up as light as it did. I mean, I don't know.
And they didn't have enough time to sort of polish it, and it's a possibility.
I don't know. Probably
they've come to him. Hey, we've got 5 songs we need you to sing. He's like,
get lost.
No.
Well, if it truly was a musical, then it would have had to be longer because it would have had to been time for songs. So the noir scenes would have expanded out more, which would solve our structure problem. Like, why is it like, I don't know, 45% of the, I mean, it's probably more than, I don't know, done the math, but it's like, because when I revisited it for this and for back when I did it on the podcast, my podcast, I was like, oh, it's over. That's it. Like, it's like, it feels like if you're going to do it, this should be like, have a bookends. I like your idea, Matt. Like no preface, no conclusion, just a one-off random one. But if you're going to do it, you have a bookend scene at the beginning and the end, and not just lots and lots of stuff on either side.
Yeah, because when the black and white bit finished, when the noir bit finished, I was amazed at how
much time was left.
Why are the credits not rolling? I was absolutely amazed that it went on and on and on and on and on. You know, which really then cemented this feeling of why have we bothered? What's all this been about? You know, what's been the point?
Yeah, it's murky. It's murky, but in some of the in the light column, things that I definitely liked. I love the chase scene, the Lex and Jimmy car chase. There's a lot of scenes that look like they were probably taken. There's a lot of stock footage in them, but I love that. But I also love the fact that they filmed it with this moving screen behind them.
Yeah, the bad projection stuff. Yeah.
I love that. I thought that's wonderful. I that's charming. I like that. And there's a couple of scenes that looked. It's the scene where Lex's car crashes, and I genuinely can't tell if that was from old footage or if they shot that. But there's a couple of moments like the car has that like unnatural sort of sped up vibe. And then it crashes, and because the car that he gets out of looks almost identical to the one that crashes. So I'm like, did they film that one scene? Did they film that? I mean, they could have done. It's not impossible.
I assume they took some old footage and just sped it up to make it like or even back then, maybe they sped it up in the 40s when it was originally shot because they can't do really extreme stunts that way.
Yeah.
So like in real life, the car just went like, so then they just sped up the stunt. But you're right. No, either way, they made it match very well. The stock footage, if that is that, and the physical car Lex was in. I was impressed by that too.
Yeah, that was the stuff that I'm like, when they're finally leaning into, and as you mentioned earlier, like the redressing of the Talon is fantastic, and the scene where Lionel when Lana, and there's too many L's in this effing show.
That's Superman, man. Superman. Welcome to Superman.
I know, when Lana meets Jimmy in that alleyway, and there's that puddle, and Club is shining in the puddle, the neon sign, and Jimmy is almost all in black and dark. I'm like, that stuff is so good. Like,
yeah,
like I was eating all of that up, and then then when I started paying attention to the story, I'm like, oh, okay. Well,
yeah, it looks great. Apart from a few. Like I said earlier, apart from a few scenes where it looks a bit flat and all looks a bit sort of amdram, it on the whole, I think the noir vibe is good. It's well done, and like you say, the shot in the puddle is really. I'm not sure there isn't a similar shot in the Blue Dahlia.
I think there might be.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah,
which is again is another Easter egg, for anyone that wants to find it, sort of thing, and. It's the story, isn't it? And it's the purpose of it that I have trouble with, and that I have a problem with, and some of the performances. Some of the performances I think are a bit.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
unfortunately,
you've got John Glover and you've got the female leads who more than make up for that.
Well, Matt, you're not Mr. Smallville over here, right? Do you like Jimmy as a character, or?
I will be honest. I will be honest. I've never liked Jimmy in any iteration of Superman.
Oh wow!
I have to say, never connected with him. But I liked looking at this. I agree with Anthony in a way. Looking at this in isolation, yeah, I thought he was. I don't buy that he's like a slick, suave reporter, but I buy that he's an honest kid who gets mixed up in dark stuff that's out of his control and beyond his reach, and the sort of journey as such as it is that he goes on to sort of uncover what he's got to uncover. I thought that was quite well done, and so I enjoyed him as a sort of sleuth lead, in this particular episode, but I've never really been a Jimmy fan. I'm sorry to say.
Is this the only episode where Jimmy is a reporter in Smallville? because
I
he's
mean,
a
more than
photographer.
just a photographer.
Because elsewhere, Lois and Clark, yada yada yada. He's a reporter who also takes pictures, but he's never writing any. He's never writing any stories. But
the George Reeves series, he's a cub reporter, and he's writing stories, and then occasionally, Perry will be like, "Grab your camera." So see different kind of avenues for him, but
he's definitely not in the Reeve movies, is he?
No, but he has a track history. He has a track history of being a cub reporter, and I think this might be the only time in Smallville where they actually give him that role.
Yeah, I'd say so. I can't think of any other instance because it's Chloe and then Lois and then Clark and then that's it. And they're all cub reporters because everyone's 21 years old, by the way.
And no one has a college degree.
I mean, that's the other thing that annoyed me about the promo for this shot for this season is the way they look are all age appropriate, and I'm like, Anthony, you recently did an episode of your podcast of hot takes, and one of my hot takes was I feel like Smallville should have done a One Tree Hill time jump after high school. They were all too old. They were all too old. I would have loved a full on 4 years of college, but they didn't do it, and they just went into the wasteland of we don't know what we're going to do until the last 2 seasons. And
the college dropout years, as I call them on my podcast.
yeah. And it's like, maybe just jump us 5 years into the future. Let them just kind of be closer to their ages, get away from the kids' stuff. Just, whatever. Just jump 5 years, and so that we can get away from the immaturity of certain aspects. And then with these posters, I'm like, maybe they're gonna do that. Maybe we're finally gonna, get adults, but we don't. So I do have to ask, what the whole point of this episode seems to basically be geared around Lana admitting that she only married Lex to protect Clark. I sort of feel like that's just a bunch of bullshit. Like, it seems like a long way to go to protect Clark, and it feels like the show is trying to retcon and soften Lana because they need to fix her character.
In the show's defense, because they do a lot of retcons. I'm not going to argue with you there. But in the wedding episode, she was going to leave and promise a few episodes before this.
Yes.
She was going to leave and be with Clark, but Lionel blackmailed her and said, I know how to kill Clark Kent and I'll do it unless you marry my son. Yeah. So that was why she did it. And then now she kept staying around doing a bunch of nefarious things. That's on her at that point. But the thing, and then she did genuinely love Lex, like in between, like 5, beginning of 6. Yeah. So that's, to me, that's more interesting. I don't because it's very complicated that way. But they really muddied all that up. So I get it. I get what you mean, Luke.
It's messy.
Yeah. There's definitely a point where I think Lana could have gone down a very different, darker path, and then they pivoted. And I guess the reveal about Lex faking her pregnancy was really
that'll do it.
Really the turning point. But even that, and Zach,
she's redeemed
more specifically. But it's like even that I feel like was, I don't know when they made up their mind about what that was going to be about, because I feel like there are instances where Lex seems genuine, right? About
and surprised.
Yeah,
and that's a retcon, I think. Yeah, the fact that he faked her pregnancy, I think at some point they're like, let's have Lex get Lana pregnant. Somebody said, we probably should have done that, and then somebody else said, let's just say he faked the pregnancy. And it's a season 6 is a mess, y'all. It's a mess.
It is.
Although it still might be worse than season 7, but that's a Smallville hot take for you, Anthony. File that away for your next hot take episode.
All right, file that away.
No, I can probably go with that. You saying season 6 is worse than 7? Yeah.
I think so. I think season 6 got some fool's gold to it. Fool's gold, I should say, because Green Arrow shows up. He's fantastic. Justin Harley's a shot in the arm. Green Arrow, Justice League, Martian Manhunter. And then there's the second half of the season, and it's a bunch of fake baby and wedding and this, you know. No.
Noir.
I know we're talking about just this episode, but since I'm going all in on season 6, Phantom, the season finale, it's a really fun, entertaining episode. So that's a really strong season finale. So they kind of, it's very like separate than everything else that's come before. Honestly, really, the way it all comes together, but it's just kind of a mess. And the reason why, and man, I'm going on my Smallville soapbox here. I'm sorry, but like I feel like the reason why I rank season 6 lower is there's no excuse here. There's no excuse. Season 7 had the writer's strike. They had actors coming and going, right? Season 4, another weak season. Christopher Reeve was supposed to play a big part of it, and he had passed away, unfortunately. So they had things that were kind of like, they had plans, and their plans got changed by things out of their control. Season 6, they could have done whatever they wanted. They didn't need to do all this nonsense, but they chose to do it that way. So to me, that's why I'm like, guys, I don't know. But that's where I am. Those are my weakest 3 seasons to me, anyway.
I think I agree with most of that. I think because when I think back on Smallville, I never think of season 6 ever. Now I do remember season 7. I remember Veritas. I remember how crazy it was. I remember how ridiculous some of it was. But I remember the writer's strike. I remember Supergirl. Those last kind of few clunky episodes when Brainiac comes back, like some of that's pretty cool. Like some of it's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. You know, like this is a season that I don't know why, but I mean, something kept me coming back and watching more. Smallville was like the first show I watched from beginning to end, like from the day it premiered to the day it ended. I just was dedicated to it for some reason, even though it had, well, not for some reason, it's a good show, but like, you know, it even when it dipped, I was still loyal. I was still loyal. Because there are some pretty bad, you know, some pretty big low moments, I think. But yeah. I suppose we're sort of getting to the finale of this. We normally rate all of our films, or you know, if we do an episode of something, we rate them out of 1 out of 5 Falcons, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. So it's time to rate Smallville Noir on the Falcon scale, right? We'll start with Zach. Out of 5, what would you give Smallville Noir?
Are there half Falcons? Or
Yeah, you can do half
Falcons. You can give.
Sometimes Luke's only given a feather.
Sometimes I've given a feather.
Oh, you know, out of 5, you say. So,
but wait, are we rating it as a noir, as a Smallville episode?
That's good distinction. Yeah.
I would say they kind of go hand in hand because it's the same thing. It's a Smallville episode that is utilizing noir trappings. So it's okay. You know, I'm gonna say they gotta kind of go hand in hand with this.
You know, I use the letter grade scale in my podcast, and sometimes I wish I hadn't, because all these pluses, minuses, they make me really go into the lab and get on the chalkboard and try to do. I'm like, well, this is a plus, and then gets a minus. If I had to do it again, I wouldn't do that. I'd do something more like just simple 1 to 5. 2 out of 5 Falcons for this. You know, like it's structurally frustrating. Why? As we kept asking, it's just like, what is the point? It just doesn't really justify itself doing this. Mm-hmm. But there's some enjoyable stuff here. Like we're talking about some of the visual elements, you know, the when they lean into the noir stuff, it hits pretty well sometimes. And, you know, not so much every time, but there's some fun stuff in here. The attempts were there. Like the car chases are fun. That for that Clark Kent moment alone is fantastic. So I'm going to give it 2 out of 5. Despite all of I feel like we've been very kind of, you know, negative here on our conversation, but you know, 2 out of 5 for me.
Fair enough. Anthony?
I'm close to that. I'll go 1.5. I'll utilize the half system here. So I'll go 1.5. No, I mean, I agree with all that. I mean, look, Zach and I have talked a lot about Smallville, Zach more so obviously, but like, there are all kinds of episodes, and there are others that are vastly more frustrating in different ways than this one. This one, to me, is a largely inoffensive episode. It's not something that I've given a ton of thought to over the years, for better or worse. It's, you know, so I don't find it offensive or anything like that, but not particularly strong either. So, I go 1.5.
It's fair. Matt?
Zach said everything that I would have said. I think this deserves 2 Falcons for the reasons that Zach gave. I think when it does the noir stuff well, it does it really well. There are some nice scenes, shots, atmosphere, vibes But overall, I wonder what the point is and why they bothered, really. And I wish they just either committed fully to a full episode of Noir that was a standalone, or hadn't bothered. So I'm going to say 2 Falcons.
Fair enough. I think I widely agree with pretty much everything that's being said. I'm torn between 1.5 to 2. I think I'll be generous and give it 2. As we've said, there really are some, when they're leaning into the noir visuals, a lot of it is excellent stuff, and I think it's impressive what some of the visuals, what they pulled off, and particularly the blending of old footage with contemporary stuff and making that feel authentic but noir-y and old-timey and not clunky or out of place. I think some of the acting is great. Like I've said a million times, John Glover is wonderful. And, his line, I guess that's what keeps us coming back for more. That deserves a 1 Falcon in and of itself, because anyone who could pull that line off and make me buy it, that's good. That's good going. I do think, but where it let me down are elements like, Lana as the femme fatale really should have been manipulating Jimmy in a more upfront and seductive way. She should have really been leaning into that role. When it turns out that she's having an affair with Clark, and I'm just like, I don't care. Of course they were the only 2 who were going to kiss. All right, whatever. Did she say, no, I won't kiss Aaron? What is that the deal? I don't know. But then things like the, Lois's singing moments is wonderful and sexy. And yeah, so we have been very harsh on this episode, but I think Anthony said it best. It is very inoffensive. You can watch it and you're not going to be like, what the F did I just watch? You're going to be a little bit, you might, but you're not going to be like, you're not going to be angry. You're going to get a complete story, but it's going to be clunky, but there's going to be charming moments, but it will be frustrating. So it's a 2 for me. It's a 2. There we go. The one and only time we'll probably talk about Smallville.
Hey, no, whenever you can find a way to mix your hobbies together like this, like I'm always trying to inject Star Trek in everything I do. So I get it. I get it.
Yes. Oh, Star Trek, those holodeck episodes.
Yeah, that's what this felt like, really. It's a bad holodeck episode of Star Trek, Luke.
Yes. This felt like a Barkley episode. Zach, Anthony, do you want to promote yourselves? Where can people find you, and what's happening with you and your podcasts and things like that?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks again for having both of us. This was really a ton of fun. And Matt, it was great meeting you. And Luke, obviously, we've been talking over social media, but this is the first time we actually spoke. So it was awesome. So I host 2 Superman podcasts. The main weekly show is called Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, and we cover the character across time and media. As of this recording, we are launching into a multi-episode run on the Connor Kent Superboy, which I have been aiming to do for a long time, and we're finally here, and I'm excited to dive in. So we've covered a ton. We're approaching our 200th episode. That's available on all major podcast platforms. And then, as you mentioned earlier, I do a rewatch podcast of the George Reeves Adventures of Superman series. That's called Another Exciting Episode in the Adventures of Superman. And this April, we'll be launching into our coverage of the second half of the series, aka the color season. So wish me luck. And that too available on all major podcast platforms.
Zach.
As for me, always on to Smallville. We talk about each and every episode of Smallville, and you can find us on social media at Always Smallville with 1 S. And as of this recording, we are nearing the end of season 10. So our episode by episode coverage is coming to a close, but we have some fun things planned for after that's over. There's obviously Smallville comic books. There's Smallville novels. So there's more to discuss beyond the 218 episodes. Don't worry, there's more content. So more to come when we wrap up the show. But that's going to be fun to get to the series finale sooner than everybody thinks. It's coming up quick. So stay tuned for that, everybody.
Yeah. How soon is that? That's because.
Well, it's gonna come out at the end of the spring. Is kind of what I have in my schedule. I take a little hiatuses here and there, like in between when the show took a hiatus between episodes. I try and coordinate that, get caught up on recording, get ahead, throw in some Superman specials. Obviously, big year for Superman 2025. James Gunn's movie's coming out, so we'll be talking a lot about that on and off as the year goes on too. So, but yes, you can kind of pencil in late spring for the series finale of Smallville coverage on Always On Smallville.
There we go. Because this, for anyone listening, we're recording in what month are we in? February. This is going to come out till the end of March, so it's you'll still have time to catch lots of Smallville. Get
caught up on all those other 217 episodes before the series finale. Okay, Matt, I hope we haven't soured you on Smallville. And Matt, if you want a list of good episodes to watch, I'm sure any of us here can.
No, not at all. I mean, at the risk of sounding really offensive, it can only get better, right?
So I'm not offended at all, sir.
I'll start from series 1, episode 1, and I'll see how I go. I'll let you know that.
All right. It can only get better if you start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Don't start from season 6, episode 21.
No, I won't. I'll start from the very beginning and I'll let you know how I go.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, thanks again, guys, for joining us.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
It's good fun.
You.
Well, that wraps up our investigation. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another case. In the meantime, please like and subscribe, and be sure to take care walking down those mean streets.